out of the sharpening rhetoric between the United States and North Korea after the North described U.S. demands to denuclearize as, quote, gangster-like. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo responding, if that's true, then the world is a gangster.
Tonight, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo drawing a line in the sand, telling the North Koreans if they think his demands for denuclearization are gangster-like, he's got plenty of company. Pompeo still insists that this weekend's talks had North Korea reaffirming its commitment to complete denuclearization. This, despite that staggering statement released after his departure, calling U.S. talking points, quote, cancerous and deeply regrettable.
North Korea called the talks with Secretary of State Pompeo deeply regrettable.
That remark came after Secretary Pompeo met with North Korean officials on Friday to follow up on President Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore last month.
In fact, Pompeo was snubbed in Pyongyang, never seeing Kim, although the White House had announced he would. Instead, the Secretary of State sat impatiently through 2 lavish banquets, everything from foie gras to ice cream, in a nation where most people starve. Former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta says the president should not have let Kim off the hook at their summit.
They're continuing to develop their nuclear capability, and they're basically sending a clear message that they aren't that willing to give up all of their nuclear weapons.
President Trump having declared that North Korea is no longer a nuclear threat, now learning what Presidents Clinton and Bush could have told him. North Korea drives a hard bargain and cheats.
Here's Secretary Pompeo speaking in Tokyo.
If those requests were gangster-like they are, the world is a gangster, because there was a unanimous decision at the UN Security Council about what needs to be achieved. The road ahead will be difficult and challenging, and we know critics will try to minimize the work that we've achieved.
While the president has maintained extreme confidence in the deal he and Kim signed at the historic summit,
thank you very much. It's fantastic.
North Korea has yet to deliver on its end. Reports claim they've expanded their missile testing facility rather than dismantling them. President Trump, on the other hand, did end military exercises known as war games, even using North Korea's language to describe them.
I wanted to stop the war games. I thought they were very provocative.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did maintain a hard line on the current sanctions against North Korea, saying they'd be enforced with great vigor.
So Pompeo went and came back from Pyongyang, and we sat here last week and we discussed a few things, but perhaps we didn't think it would go quite as badly as we expected. We expected some things to come out, but it seems like Pompeo got very little out of it. What is your assessment of Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang?
Well, Secretary Pompeo would not agree with your assessment. He said that he had many hours of, productive conversation with his North Korean partners, and denuclearization itself is a very complex issue. And he said he was very proud of his negotiation team. But I'm inclined to agree with you that the talk failed to produce any breakthroughs. He described the conversation and negotiation as constructive and made in good faith. That means that they must have clashed on many of the key issues because of huge differences. That's why Secretary Pompeo described many hours of the negotiations constructive and in good faith. Means that they at least tried to hold on to minimum level of mutual trust that they were negotiating in order to pursue mutual benefits.
Isn't there a risk that North Korea ends up pushing back too hard? For example, Trump last time he threatened to just walk out of the summit. Isn't there a risk that he's North Korea playing with fire a little bit? An unpredictable nature of the Trump administration?
Right. Definitely North Korea is playing a dangerous game, playing with fire, and it's we have to wait and see how Trump administration will respond, because Trump administration will not be outsmarted by North Korea when it comes to playing with fire or playing the game of uncertainty. So who knows, there might be a surge of tension on the Korean Peninsula.
ready for some serious space action, something epic and dramatic.
I'm excited.
Sold?
It's all going down this week across the night sky.
With Mars closer than what it has been in 15 years, almost double the brilliance of Jupiter through the naked eye, and the longest total lunar eclipse of the century, space enthusiasts can tune into the skies for a double celestial delight this month.
Much of it has been swallowed up by fire in one day. The extent of the damage was impossible to gauge as night fell.
A wildfire tore through a beach resort community popular with tourists and retirees.
This is the E94 motorway leading into Athens, with drivers risking their lives to get past the encroaching fires. 100-kilometre-an-hour winds fan the flames and disperse the smoke.
This is the deadliest fire season to hit Greece in more than a decade. 60 people are reported dead in wildfires raging outside of the capital.
The fires spread. By Monday night, there were 3 wildfires, the worst now east of Athens in the seaside towns of Mate and Rafina.
It's a difficult moment for the region. It's a difficult night for Greece.
A dry winter and now a sweltering heatwave has turned the country into a tinderbox.
Rescue crews reported finding more than 20 people huddled together on a beach, and the Red Cross told local media that some had apparently been family members who were found hugging each other.
The closure of roads and a main highway. In the village of Mati, charred cars cover the streets. Greece is now asking the European Union for help.
Korea is not alone in trying to cope with the unbearable heat. In some parts of our world, the sizzling conditions are proving to be the deadliest they've ever experienced.
This is the first time we're hearing about a case of people at sea hurt because of the volcano's incredible power.
This is the moment a fireball exploded out of the sea, showering a nearby tour boat with flaming rocks. The blast is nerve-rattling as the screams of terror from the passengers on board. In just the past few days, a new island of lava just off the coast has begun to form, drawing tourists who want to get close to the action.
I definitely would not tell other people not to go do it because of this, because this is probably a once-in-a-lifetime happening.
A once-in-a-lifetime experience, in more ways than one.
Since May 3rd, the Kilauea volcano has erupted continuously, ravaging the landscape of Hawaii's Big Island.
The ongoing flow from these fissures creating these huge fields of now hardened lava.
This morning, lava is still pouring out of massive fissures or cracks in the ground.
In Japan, a massive search and rescue operation is underway for victims of the worst flooding there in 35 years.
Flooding has ripped Japan in two, with central and southern regions largely submerged.
Over the weekend, torrential rain, at times as much as 3 inches per hour, inundated roads and entire towns, swallowing homes and cars.
More than 3 times the normal amount of rainfall for the entire month of July has fallen on parts of western and southwestern Japan since Thursday.
The death toll has steadily climbed, but this year there were special circumstances. Typhoon Praparoon entered the Sea of Japan on Tuesday, high winds taunting Japan's southern islands before it moved north, dropping unprecedented rainfall.
Firefighters in Sweden say their battle for control is far from over. Remarkably, nobody's been injured by the dozens of wildfires.
Wildfires rage as far north as the Arctic Circle. More than 40 fires burned across Sweden on Wednesday, prompting Swedish authorities to seek international assistance.
Unusually high temperatures across the whole Nordic region, up to 33 Celsius, coupled with virtually no rain for several weeks, have made the vegetation here highly flammable. Finland and Norway have also had wildfires in the last week.
Norway, which dealt with wildfires of its own in 100 locations last week, has also dispatched 6 helicopters to Sweden for assistance.
Swedish authorities say that as of Thursday, an area equivalent to 20,000 football pitches had burned. That's 10 times the size you'd expect in a normal year. And some fires are still spreading.
Northern Israel was shaken awake Thursday morning by a series of small earthquakes. Measuring at magnitude 4.1, these security camera videos show the streets heaving and shuddering. No one was injured, but residents say they were shaken.
I felt the quake at 1:45 in the morning. I was sitting in my parlor when suddenly my chair started shaking and I heard the ground rumble with a loud boom.
And now the Holy Land hasn't had a major earthquake since 1927, but after over a dozen minor quakes in just the last few days,
Israel is located on a massive fault line called the Dead Sea Transform, where the continental plates of Africa and Arabia meet.
To Iran now, where a magnitude 5.9 earthquake has struck the western province of Kermanshah near the border with Iraq. It came just hours after 2 smaller quakes struck Hormozgan province. 2 earlier earthquakes in the south with magnitudes of 4.7 and 5.7 damaged buildings in a few villages without causing casualties. Iran is crisscrossed by major geological fault lines.
Now, last month was the driest June on record for large parts of England, while Scotland recorded its highest ever temperature. The Met Office revealed that today.
Britons are sweltering under an intense heat wave. Today is the 13th consecutive day where temperatures have reached 28 degrees or above.
The weather extremes do extend far beyond the United States. The temperature in Japan, just west of Tokyo, hit 106 today. That is the highest temperature ever recorded in Japan.
And so it's not so much that Japan is unused to heat waves, it's that the intensity is stronger than it has been in the past.
Mid-July is usually the monsoon season here in the nation, but that's not the case this year. Instead, we're experiencing a scorcher of a weather, a condition set to last at least a week and could go on for the rest of July.
A heat wave in Sweden inside the Arctic Circle is feeding dozens of wildfires, one of the worst outbreaks the country's ever seen. Strong winds are fanning wildfires in Greece, including 2 major fires near Athens.
While heavy rain and severe weather impact the eastern 2/3 of the country, parts of the west are gripped by record-breaking heat. It is hot with a capital H.
In downtown Los Angeles, the City of Angels feeling more like hell. a record 106.
It feels dangerous. It feels like I'm burning and I'm wearing sunscreen already.
In 4 hours, temperatures rose 30 degrees in Universal City.
We have fires here. It's not unusual, but not of this magnitude.
Tonight, epic fire and record heat. A dangerous and deadly combination.
The heat is making the battle against California wildfires all the more difficult.
Tonight from California, where homes are being threatened, to Oregon, where structures are being lost, crews are losing ground in this deadly and destructive wildfire season.
Heavy downpours triggered massive flooding in central Pennsylvania yesterday. Floodwaters swamped roads and homes and swept away cars.
With smoke visible from 30,000 feet, it's heating up on the front lines. Tonight, as the weather gets dangerously hot, the West is getting burned.
About 80 miles northwest of Philadelphia, raging floodwaters swallowed the town of Tremont, Pennsylvania. Officials there declared a disaster emergency because of the flash flooding.
Someone could come help save me.
In nearby Pine Grove, a stranded driver took cell phone video of the flooding as he sat on top of his car,
devouring everything in its path.
We don't have fires now, we have mega fires.
The inferno is exploding so quickly, the extent of the damage is unknown.
We saw rates of spread that normally we would only see in the early and late fall.
Tonight across the West, crews bracing for a firefight.
Hershey, Pennsylvania, the famous Hershey Park and neighboring Zoo America closed because of flooding. Drone shots show the extent of the rising waters.
When we live in the city, it's very easy to forget what's happening outside our own little world. You headed out to Walgett and spent a bit of time there. Just how devastating was it to see the drought firsthand?
These are some of the state's most productive areas, and we were walking on 25 square kilometre farms with not a green blade of grass. The entire farm, they've had one crop in the last 6 years. Sheep are dying. Farmers are getting ready to lock the gate and get jobs off farm.
Brian, drought in Australia, it's not restricted to any one place or any one state. Did a lot of drought-related stories when I was growing up in Queensland. I was a young cadet reporter in Rockhampton in particular, and you know, farmers would get depression and a lot, you know, there'd be a lot of suicide. Because they can't go on? Is that still as bad as it gets?
Absolutely. Country psychologists and psychiatrists are adamant that the drought has seen an increase in suicide and suicidal thoughts. And Brian's colleagues who run a psychology service are getting 2 or 3 calls a day or text messages from farmers on the brink of suicide because they can't cope anymore and they can't support their families.
And they're taking something like 50 calls a week from farmers who are suffering from anxiety, depression, you know, threatening to suicide. I mean, and 80% of these callers are men. That's unheard of. That's how bad it is. It's critical, right?
On the intervening night of 27th and 28th July, the moon will be totally eclipsed for 1 hour 43 minutes. The event can be observed in a large part of the globe, including in India, where it can be seen after 11:54 p.m. Indian Standard Time on 27th July.